Welcome to the Miracle You, guiding you on the journey towards finding passion and purpose, and how to discover, create, and live a life by your design. Whether your success has been plentiful or your missed opportunities have been overwhelming, we can help you become a more empowered, masterful person and show you how to share your gift with the world. It's time to inspire change from within with the host of the Miracle You, Vince Kramer.
Hello, imagination. I'm Vince Kramer, your host, and welcome to the Miracle You, where you learn about the magic of living your life by finding the example in real life. I've talked many times about we have our own answers. Sometimes it takes a while for us to learn how to tap into that guidance and have an understanding of the information that's coming into us and what to take action on and what not to take action on. But one of the amazing things about our body and one of the amazing things about intuition is when something feels good to us, when we have that feeling in our chest, in our gut, that this is the right thing to do, that's really a message that you need to take action on. What gives you that adrenaline boost, what gives you that vibrational boost is really the direction that you should be following. So the things that make you happy and the things that you enjoy doing are the things that you should be pursuing. So when something shows up in your life, maybe it's a circumstance, maybe it's words that somebody said, it might just be a picture that you get in your head and you really feel good about it. It makes you happy. You get that gut reaction. Then take advantage of it and step fully into that space with as much action as you can in the moment. I'm with Ian Grant today, and Ian was born and raised in Hyde Park, Vermont, with family dogs by his side. In 1998, at 22 years old, he decided to move to Florida to pursue a career as a professional golfer. Towards the end of his career in 2005, he caught an episode of The Dog Whisperer and was hooked. And that's his miracle. In 2007, he and his wife opened Vermont Dog Boarding and Behavior out of their home with hopes of helping local dogs. And now he is getting clients from all over New England. Ian Grant, are you ready to share the miracle of you with the imagination?
I am ready. We can get rolling.
Awesome. I can't wait to hear more about this. Tell me a little bit about you, your wife, and what's going on in the boarding behavior world with you. And then we'll dive into some more personal stuff.
Well, I think right now with the COVID world, uh, dog trainers right now, we are as busy as you can possibly be. There's a lot of people, obviously, as you know, that we were all working from home to a degree. And I think there was a lot of dog owners out there that saw their dogs every minute of the day and finally realized they wanted a little bit of help. A lot of those little nuances that were cute before maybe weren't so cute living that way 24/7. So right now we are crazy busy. We are full for daycare. We're not taking any new clients. Training is through the roof. Lessons are booked out almost a couple of months out. So we are rocking and rolling right now. And we're not even open for boarding because nobody's really traveling, right? And nobody's going on vacations. And so that's going to come here in the next, who knows, month or two with the vaccination. And I think the floodgates are going to open and we're really going to be rolling then.
What a problem to have, right?
Yeah. Job security is what they call it, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's amazing. Share with me a little bit about, the episode of Caesar really got you hooked and got you moving in the direction of sharing your gifts with dogs and their families. What what was it that really, besides that episode, was there a wake up call for you that opened you up to looking at life a little differently?
Yeah, I think I remember right where I was, right? We all have these moments. We knew right where we were and where we were sitting and what was going on. And so I was towards the end of what was my golf career, and I was home for the holidays and I was sitting next to my dad watching he was just flipping through the channels, right? Just killing time over the holidays. And we had always grown up around dogs. We didn't even own a leash, let alone a crate. It was just a different time. We actually let our dogs out at night for the night and then brought them back in the morning, which is completely unheard of. And it goes against everything that I that I teach now. Uh, so flipping through the channels, and we caught this. My dad stopped on the episode of the Dog Whisperer, and watching Caesar, he was cornering basically a white German Shepherd in an alley that was baring its teeth and basically showing everything that it had to show before it was going to bite. And he kept moving towards that dog. And my dad and I looked at each other like, this guy is crazy. What is going on? Obviously, I know more now about what was happening, but the thing is, I always enjoyed psychology in high school. Uh, I remember taking a social psychology class, and I was so fascinated with how the brain worked. However, I was not a good student. And so the thought of reading a lot, knowing psychology had to deal with that, it didn't. I knew I was going to hit a roadblock for myself. And that's when I learned in that episode about a psychology. There was a dog psychology, psychology of dogs. And I thought, well, what is all this about? And so that whole trip up home for the holidays became this binge watching of Dog Whisperer stuff, to the point where we were even watching, reruns that were happening. And so I thought, this is fascinating to me. This is this is what I have a hunch, like I might be able to do something with this. I think it was within 30 days that when I went back to Florida, I ended up dropping the golf thing and got a job at a hotel. And my wife was working in the department next to me, and pretty soon learned that she had a dog. And I'm like, oh boy, I get to test all this stuff out. And so I jumped in feet first, and I haven't. That was 1990. Yeah, 19. Let's see, probably two. Actually, no, it was 2005. 2005, and I haven't looked back ever since. It's been a fun road the whole time.
Once you catch that calling, and once you know, this is why I'm here, it makes it easy to jump in feet first, doesn't it?
It really does, and it's interesting because I remember even before I did the golf thing, I've had a couple of these kind of miracle moments, if you will. And uh, before the golf thing, I was working in a hotel, and I remember just being miserable. And there was politics in a hotel, and I just thought, this is not enjoyable. This is not fun going to work. And my mom was outside. It was like summertime, and she was hanging clothes up on the clothesline. And I walked out. I'm like, Mom, I don't even know what to do. Like, I'm miserable at this job. I applied for other jobs that I didn't get. And she just stopped what she was doing for a second, and she goes, "What makes you happy?" And I'm like, "Honestly, right now, playing golf does." And she goes, "See where it takes you." And so I did that, and I'm glad that I did. Obviously, I'm not doing it today, but I took my shot. I don't have any regrets because I did take the chance. It didn't lead to anything that in that career, but there's a lot of things that I learned in that career that helped me out today in the dog business, if you believe it.
Oh, I do believe it. At Imagine Miracles, that we believe there's no mistakes or coincidences in our lives, that we're developing gifts and talents in every circumstance that really come into alignment with what we're here to do, what our purpose is. So, could you share a few of those things so people can understand how you transfer what you've learned in golfing into your current purpose following business?
The interesting part of this whole concept is that I really, I obviously love working with dogs. I love working with animals. But at the end of the day, I'm working with more people than I am dogs, right? A family that, whether it's a couple or a family that five comes in with one dog, I am still working with more people. And so working in the golf business, on top of, practicing and playing a lot, I got a great job in Cleveland in a private golf club, and it brought me into a different world echelon of people, if you will. And so I kind of had to learn that different social grace, if you will, of dealing with uh, people that are they have higher expectations of you, if you will. And so that that employment there on top of my past employment in hotels, customer service comes pretty easily to me. And as much as I give lessons and I teach people, it's still customer service what I do today. So the hotel business is behind me, the golf business is behind me, but that's stuff that I still use every day in the dog business. Especially dealing, I have a staff of my own too, right? And so I know how I was treated at times, the times that I did enjoy and the times that I didn't enjoy. Uh, but I think the cool part is that we get to kind of pick and choose what we enjoyed from every job that we've had or every little experience that we've had, and we can put it into what we want to create. And for me, I created this business, and I love my staff, and I love what I do, and I can't imagine doing anything else at this point.
That's awesome. One of the things that I really enjoy that Caesar shares is that, each member of the family is a member of the pack, and each member of the pack needs to know its place and how to interact with the rest of the pack. Um, how, what do people learn about being in a pack and learning how to deal with other people? Because as you said, your business is more about people really than about pets. So could you share a little bit about that?
I think as far as I'm going to first kind of touch on the staff perspective of this because I think this is important too, as much as family is as well. I think as far as staff is concerned, I've got one staff member. He'll have been with me for 7 years. This fall, he took a little few month hiatus, tried a different job, didn't like it, came back. I've got another one that'll be 5 years in September, another one that'll be 3 years in May, and another one that just recently started with us just before these past holidays. I think it's important that we find what our employees want to do, what our staff wants to do within this industry, if you will, whatever industry that you're in. And I think I've always told them, I don't expect you to work for me for the rest of your life. I know at some point you're going to put in your notice, you're going to move on. All I can hope is that there is something that you can grasp from this job that you really enjoyed, whether it's the way that I taught or the way that we all get along, and be able to take it somewhere else. But I think we have to give our staff a purpose. They each enjoy their role. Find out what they enjoy, and let them grow from there. I've got two young kids. I've got to do the same thing with them, right? And my wife, she enjoys her baking, and has a baking business, and so it's the same thing. We've got to support and fill in the gaps when we need to, and make sure everybody kind of has their role, but they're enjoying the role that they're in too.
Right. And as we do that, we truly uncover what makes us happy, what we're good at, and that, just like you said, you brought a lot of your talents and gifts into this business and what you love. And as these people are developing gifts and talents from what they learn from you, what they learn about the animals and how to interact with them really makes a difference in their lives going forward also. What would you say one of the things that you teach dogs that's really something that would benefit people to know and understand? I know I'm putting you on the spot here.
I think for me, when it comes to working with the dog, the first thing I really want to do is I want to get to know them. I think sometimes we tend to move too quickly with our dogs to the point where we're just immediately going to start teaching them something right off. In my case, obviously, a number of dogs are rolling in and out of here every day, and so I don't have a at home relationship with these dogs. But I want to get to know these dogs. I want to see that personality first before I start working with them, because then I know what's going to drive that dog. So it's the same thing as my employees. I want to find out what motivates them so we can go down that path. And I think that's important for us, not only as dog owners, if you will, but also as people that may be listening, is that sometimes we have to take a step back, find out what people's motivation are, whether we work with them, whether they're family, and just be able to roll with that and ride the wave. And sometimes the waves get a little rough, but more times than not, I'm a firm believer if we're doing the right thing, those waves are going to be a lot smoother than they are rough, and things come easier in that way.
Awesome. Awesome. I agree 100% in how that really affects not just our lives, but the lives of everybody that we come in contact with. Let me ask you this. What what do you think your overall underlying purpose is? I know the dogs are the front, let's say the storefront, but what do you
Yeah.
think your underlying purpose is?
For me, I think it's helping people. I I look at every job, well, except my very first job was a vending route. So I didn't really run into a lot of people. I just ran into a lot of vending machines. But every job since then has been with the public. And I enjoy helping people. I enjoy solving that problem. I enjoy making their lives easier. And so whether somebody was, I was a doorman and a bellman, so I took a lot of brunt of the wrong room or the wrong bed setup in the room, or I got ocean view instead of ocean front. And so when you're on the forefront, you're in the trenches there, and you quickly learn to adapt to what's going on, and you also quickly learn to uh, kind of snuff out any fires that may happen. And so for me personally, I like helping people out. I want to make things easier for them. And so if I can make something easier for somebody today, I can put my head on the pillow at night and I can rest well. I don't want to make things more difficult. And so for sure, it's funny you say the storefront because that is such a good term for what I do, but the behind the scenes is I truly enjoy helping people.
Well, it's awesome, and it shows that it really fuels you, and it makes you feel good to be completing that mission in life. Uh, this might be an interesting question because you might be in that space, but let me ask you, what would be the next step for you? What would you like to see to move you into the next position in life or the next position in the dog business?
I think in the dog business, I'm actually getting to the point where I've got other trainers that are reaching out to me and want to spend time with me to learn from me. I never thought in a million years when I first started this business that I would have people that would enjoy what I was doing so much that they would be asking me if they could come spend time with me. I I mean that's a complete shock, let alone from out of state or across the country. I just never thought that that would have been on the radar. And that's very humbling to me, and it's an honor as well. It's not something that I take lightly. I Again, going back to being able to help people, and right now I help dog owners. If it gets to the point where I can help dog trainers or even helping dog daycare businesses, that to me would be the next step. I've been doing this for 14 years. I've seen a thing or two when it comes to hanging out with big groups of dogs every day. And I think eventually I'll get to the point where I'd like to help some businesses travel around a little bit. Kids will be older, obviously, be easier on the family, or they come with me, and just be able to help out. And again, solve some problems, make things easier, put some systems into work, and who knows where it'll lead from there. But I know it'll be making me happy, and it'll be making things easier for those business owners as well.
Awesome. I think that sounds like a great next step, and it sounds like people want you to make that step. So that's awesome in itself. Let
Yes.
let me ask you this. So you watched episode after episode of Caesar, and I'm sure you've done a lot of research and a lot of reading and a lot of on the job training.
Yes.
Some of it probably nicer than other parts of it.
Yep.
How did you? And this is so important for the audience to hear. How did you take all that information that you learned and make it your own?
That's a great question because I have to tell you, in the dog training world, uh, I've interviewed, as you know, I've interviewed a dog trainer from every state, and so I've gotten a lot of feedback. And it's interesting because there's no two trainers that are doing things exactly alike. And I think that's when you can tell that you are being true to yourself, is that when you can create what you want to create. And in this industry, you have that ability. You don't, there isn't a black and white line that you have to follow one way or the other. You can make it your own. And so, in the midst of interviewing all these dog trainers and having a number of trainers in my network that I reach out to when I have difficulties, right? Uh, I've really been able to create what feels right to me. And I think that goes back to what we were talking about before with, the wave analogy here, that if things are going smoothly, I feel like you're doing things the right way. And I have to tell you, as a trainer, though, our philosophies do change over time, right? Everything kind of has an ebb and flow to it. And some things sometimes seem a little bit more difficult than others. But for me personally and professionally, probably the last 3 months, 4 months, I have never felt so comfortable and confident in my work with dogs as I ever have. And I think that's important too, is that when you're doing something that you love, that you have that confidence, because those other, the other jobs that I've had that I was miserable in, you don't even, confidence isn't even a word that comes into your vocabulary during those times. It's just you're miserable and you want to get out of it.
Well, that's a great lead into the fact that, because you feel confidence, you know you're where you're supposed to be. And when you know where you're supposed to be, the confidence comes automatically. So it's kind of a round robin there, if you will, of the confidence and understanding that you're living for your purpose. What makes you different than a lot of these trainers? You've interviewed so many. What makes you different?
I think my ability to listen to my instincts. I'm big on listening to your instincts, listening to that gut reaction. Because when you have an animal in front of you that you have or don't have a relationship with, what can you really depend on in that moment? You can't depend on having a conversation like you and I are now because they don't speak English. So we have to go with that gut feeling of being in the moment. And I think that is where things get lost for some people. And it doesn't even need to be a dog training business. It can be anybody's business that you're in. Uh, but when you have an animal in front of you and it's just you and that animal in the room and you have no previous relationship, there's to me, there's one thing you can depend on, and that's your instinct. That's that gut feeling that says, maybe I should put a leash on this dog and walk it around a little bit. There's something that's telling me right now that this is what I should do. Sometimes we get into our head too much. My old golf coach used to say, sometimes we get paralysis through analysis. And so that's one of a few sayings in my head that I have quite often is just don't get too deep into your own head, because it'll confuse you and you're not going to go anywhere. And so the thing about instincts is that it's really hard to teach. It's I can't say, hey Vince, follow your instincts today, because we get that happens for a second and a half and then it's gone. So it has to happen in moments, and I think that's where dogs, for me, help me listen to my instincts throughout the day. And it's not something that I have to consciously think of all the time. Excuse me. I think it's being in that moment, listening to those instincts and moving forward with wherever they take you.
For all of us, relationships are extremely important, and the more that we can learn about how to be in a relationship in an empowering way, not just for us, but for others, is very evident when you see an owner and a dog or a trainer and a dog. Uh, could you share what you've learned about connection with animals that can be used in relationships between people?
Yeah, I think when we think of dog training, we always think of positive reinforcement, right? If the dog does this, they get the reward. And I think raising two kids, there's a lot of positive reinforcement that happens. It just comes differently. And I think working with dogs on a daily basis and seeing that whole cause and effect of the positive version of it. Obviously, we see some bad behavioral cases that go the opposite way. Uh, but I think in that context of that positive reinforcement, if you will, we can look at it and go, okay, dog does something that pleases me. I'm going to tell that dog that he's been good or she's been good, and reward it. We don't have that ability to explain to the dog what they're concept is and what we're trying to teach them and our philosophy. And I'm going to follow my instincts and you just do what you're going to do. And so I kind of am on this, opposite sides of the tracks here. Where at home with my kids, I can have these conversations and say, look, if you do this, there's going to be consequences, right? We can't just walk up and hug somebody that we don't know at school. We have to give personal space and we can have that conversation. In the dog world, if they lunge at somebody, I can't have that conversation with them and say that's not appropriate. And so for me, there's two different ways of being able to explain it. One way we're going to explain it to the animal. The other way we can explain it to our kids. And I enjoy that part of it. And that goes back to the psychology or the sociology of my early interest in it in high school, is that I get to kind of use it in two different ways every day, both in the human psychology way and the dog psychology way.
You have really stepped into two very interesting lives in being a professional golfer and then stepping into being a entrepreneur, a business owner, a dog trainer. So many titles that you could give yourself. What would you share with people on being willing to find and step into what they're being called to?
It's interesting you say that too, because my wife's always saying how, she's proud of me for what I'm doing, but she goes, I don't know if I could ever do that kind of thing. And so I don't know what it is. I there wasn't a time growing up where, my parents would say, hey, if you want to be an astronaut, let's go to space camp or something. There wasn't, I don't remember that conversation. Um, but when my mom told me what makes you happy, I think that was really, it wasn't the you want to be an astronaut, go to space camp. It was, what makes you happy? Well, this makes me happy. Okay, well, chase after that. And at that time, I didn't even think twice about it, right? I just kind of made my plans. My grandmother had a house in Florida, so I talked to her about staying at that house, and you just kind of make it happen. You get there, you look for a job, and and then you just kind of let the chips fall where they may. When it came to starting my own business, it was just like I think that I enjoy dogs. I enjoy hanging out with dogs. I enjoy walking dogs, and again, it made me happy. And so I think that motivation came from within. There wasn't somebody saying, "Hey, Ian, if you do this, you're going to be able to do that." And it didn't go that way for me. And I think looking back on it, there's I helped, our daughter was born when the business was out of my home. There was some days I had 10 or 15 dogs out of my house uh, with our fenced in backyard. And I still had our daughter there who was, she didn't go to daycare till she was one or something. So I was taking care of her and the dozen dogs that we had. And I would take the dogs for a walk every morning, and she would be in a backpack as I'm walking all these dogs. I look back at it now and I'm like, I really don't know how I did that. Uh, but there's just like, you make it happen, right? When you're in those moments and things are going well and it's smooth, you make it happen. And I've always been, it's not that I always want to push the boundaries. Just like if it makes me happy, I'm going to go do it. That's all there is to it.
And that's great advice, because if we're following that high vibration, if we're moving into that space where we know we feel good about it, then we know we're heading in the right direction, and that's really part of what you bring to the dogs too. When you're at a high vibration, when you're not frustrated, then they're able to perform at their highest level. You shared, Ian, that where the chips fall, you know, but I'm venturing to guess that it's more than where the chips fall. I think the chips fall and then you have to notice it and take action on it, back to the intuitive. Can you give some examples of where you took action when the chips fell?
When I first, yeah, actually, so when we first moved back to Florida or back to Vermont from Florida, I moved into the house that I grew up in. My parents had moved out, lived in a different home. And so we were renting that out. I was going to put up the fence. I was going to start the business out of the home, the whole thing. Then I got the letter in the mail to cease and desist.
Hmm.
And I'm like, what, I don't even know what this means. I didn't know you have to apply for zoning. What are permits? What's the development review board? You know, those, so those chips definitely fell, and they made a lot of noise when it came down to it. And so, you know, you have to go through the process, and sure enough, I applied and I got denied. And this was kind of like, wow, what am I going to do now? You know, what's going to happen now? We're probably going to have to look into probably buying a house, and going through the whole development review board in that town and everything. And so we had to do that. And those are one of those times where I definitely put the cart before the horse, but I had no idea. I didn't know, you know, and that's one of those situations. So when we moved into our house that we're in now, I think it was December. We moved in December 3rd, 2007. December 4th, 2007. I already had 3 dogs coming to board with me. I didn't even have a fence up. We got hammered with snow. We got like a foot of snow. So the guys putting in the fence, it was not easy for them. But those were kind of the rocky times of like, boy, is this really going to work? And I feel like that kind of goes with what you're saying, is the chips were falling, but it's kind of up to us in those situations to make sure we put them in order. And it can be a lot of work putting them in order, uh, but it's definitely worth it. Obviously, now as I look back at it.
I'm going to have to reconsider how long my podcast is because I always get deep into these conversations and I'm
Yeah.
loving every minute of it and I run out of time, as you probably know. Could you give us a piece of parting guidance, something that you think everyone should take away from this podcast?
This whole time I've been talking, this one thing has been ringing in my head, and this was advice that my mom has always given me. When I was a kid, it would bug the heck out of me because I hated hearing it. As an adult now with a business and where I am at this point in my life, I love it. And this statement is: lessons are repeated until they are learned. And for me, when I got that cease and desist letter in the mail, that was one of those lessons that I had to learn. And thankfully that I didn't have to repeat that. And I did it right the next time. But when I moved out of the house and moved into this space that I'm in now, I had to do it again. And so there are times as a business owner where it's like you feel like you keep hitting your head against the wall, but it's the same issue over and over and over and over again. And until we learn how to bust through that, until we learn how to deal with it, how to solve it, it's going to keep popping up. And so you can imagine as a teenager, when you hear that, you're like, yeah, that's not going to happen to me. Right. And I'm in my 40s now. I get it. I get it probably clearer now than I ever have. But that's definitely one of those sayings that I live by, especially when it comes to dealing with dogs. I'm not going to keep trying to do the same lesson with a dog over and over and over again if it's not working. I, I, I've got to figure out why it's not working and then move on from there.
Einstein shares that's the definition of insanity, right?
Yes, that it is.
For sure. Could you tell the audience how they can get in touch with you and learn more about you and the dog training and the work that you do, especially what's coming with trainers?
Yeah. So they can find me. The website is vermontdogboardingandbehavior.com. Uh, as uh, as you are as well, I'm a podcaster too. So my podcast is the Vermont Dog Trainer Show. There's all sorts of advice on there, as well as a number of interviews. I think I've almost reached 100 dog people, if you will, 100 interviews. So it's been fun to kind of pick their brain as well. And on Facebook, I'm under Vermont Dog Trainer, so they can jump on there too. But there's a ton of content that I put out, a lot of free stuff because, again, like I said, I enjoy kind of solving problems. So if somebody picks one little tidbit out of everything, I am totally cool with that.
Awesome. Thank you, Ian, for sharing that. All that information will be available on Ian Grant's show page. Just look for Ian's page on themiracleu.com. That information will be available. And please take advantage of learning and touch in and tap into all these amazing things that Ian's got to share. Not just about raising a dog or training a dog, but how that can affect your life also. Ian, thank you so much for joining me today. Like I said, I could be talking to you for hours about the subject of the dogs and the subjects of you and what you're bringing to the world. And thank you for truly living your purpose.
Thank you, Vince. I appreciate it.
You bet. On behalf of Mary, my wife and business partner, and the entire team at Imagine Miracles, we wish you a miracle day.
You've completed this episode of The Miracle You, but we have plenty more to help you discover your own personal passion and purpose. Head over to themiracleyou.com for free resources to assist you on your journey, as well as register for our free webinar, Discover Your Miracle Life, 3 mind-awakening steps toward your unique purpose, or apply for a one-on-one Your Life, Your Way breakthrough session and discover your next best step on your journey. All available exclusively on our website. That's themiracleyou.com. We look forward to sharing more experiences of passion, purpose, and life by design next time, right here on The Miracle You.